Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 3 o'clock, time to start our webinar. I hope some more people will join. There are more than 50 registrants for this webinar. Okay, so this is kind of a concluding webinar of our series on how to conduct and publish excellent research. And the idea was to kind of reveal a little bit how the editorial process is going behind the scene when we receive submissions. We have had now 5 webinars with very well respected speakers, and all those webinars are recorded. So I would really encourage you to go to the archives and have a look. And yeah, you have a link here on the QR code. But to start with, our journal, Traffic Safety Research, we define ourselves as an academic-led, international, interdisciplinary, peer-reviewed, and fair open access scientific journals. Many adjectives or attributes. What I think is important here, however, is the academic-led. Because people who are behind the journal, like these are the people. They are all researchers. They are all active in doing research, publishing research, and also understanding the expectations of the researchers from the publishing, well, let's call it industry. And that is very good. We do have the direct connection to the needs of the researchers. But the backside is we have never been trained to be editors, or we've never been trained to run a journal. And that means that it actually requires quite much of learning from our side, and that's what we're actually doing quite a lot. So there are quite some books to read, there are quite many online resources, and we do indeed spend much time with those materials. And also we are very much open for the feedback. So if you find that something is not working properly, if something is not really up to the best practices, we are quite open for that type of feedback. How it all started? It all started with a big why. And here, of course, I'm referring to this guy, Simon Sinek. Probably some of you have heard of him or listened. He used to have one of the most viewed TED Talk. I'm not sure if it's still the case, but like 4 or 5 years ago, he was the TED Talk guy. And basically his message was that very often when people do things, they're quite sure what they're doing. Sometimes they have understanding like how they're doing things, but it's very seldom people ask question why we're doing things. And his message is that why is actually the most important. If you understand the high-level motives, and if you can communicate those high-level motives, you will get everybody on your side. And our big why in the traffic safety research was, well, we were not really happy with the situation in the publishing. So you're probably aware already of that big issue that, well, there are a handful of really almost like monopolist big publishers, and what they do, they provide technical tools for publishing, but they do not do research, they do not do reviewing, they do not do editing, and yet the research institutes have to pay quite significant amount of money. And when that issue was first raised and we started to talk about open access, the publishing houses were also quite quick in adopting, changing their business scheme. So now if you want to publish open access, again, you have to pay a lot. And more researchers are not happy about that and looking for alternatives. And just to give a short illustration, the different journal ranking systems, they provide information about how your journal is positioned in relation to other journals. But in this case, with SCImago index, they also provides other type of statistics. And in case of the TSR journal, they said, well, other similar journals with similar impact, with similar number of papers and so on, with similar indexes, well, they would charge around 3,000. I don't remember if it was dollars or euros, but you get an idea. And those numbers are based basically on the journals coming from the big publishers. However, what we know from like running our journal, what it really costs, it's somewhere just above 500 euros. So yes, we do have costs that we need to cover. We do have subscription to software services. We do have memberships in different scientific editorial associations for education purposes. We do have subcontractors who do the formatting. But at the end, the bills with all the overheads, with everything, it's about 500 to 600 euros per paper. So you could really wonder why the big journals are charging that high amount of money. And this is, of course, given that editing and reviewing is done, well, it's not paid, it's done in our free time, but so is the case with the big journals as well. There is, however, another big issue, and that is probably even more serious. The current system really encourages judging the researchers based on their publications. In many universities, research institutions, basically your salary, your position, your contract are dependent on how much you publish and also where you publish and how much you are cited. So these create kind of an urge for researchers to publish more and more frequently. More papers means you are more secure, your position is more secure. And again, this has been criticized, this has been discussed in different forums. This article from The Guardian is just one of the examples. However, I really liked this citation that basically it says there are too many articles, there are too many journals, but they do not add real values. So the system encourages us researchers to publish more, and there are publishing houses who see the opportunity. Well, guys, you want to publish more? We are willing to provide that opportunity. Just pay us money. So basically, we are being drowned in papers that they do not really address real problems, they do not really add real knowledge, real value. And that was probably the most important factor why we started the journal. So at the end, it cooked down to the following mission statement of the journal. So we decided we are not going to be profit oriented. So yes, we do need to cover the costs, but there is no profit intended. And since we are not interested to earn more money, it's not a factor for us to publish more. And then we can be picky. Then we really can prioritize quality over the quantity. And we are very much interested in publishing research that actually does make the world a better place. I will talk a little bit about that, how exactly we define that. But we do not want publish just for the sake of publishing. We want to share knowledge that does affect traffic safety in a positive way. Rigorous editorial standards, that is very ambitious. And for us, it's not really a statement that our editorial standards are the best, but it's rather a direction. It means that we learning all the time, we are improving the routines, the criterias all the time. At the same time, it's very important for us to be supportive and to really have that personal human contact with our authors. Yeah, and finally, we want to support a research from low and middle income countries. Again, if you are following the development, if you looked into the WHO global reports, basically the traffic safety problems are no longer really in the rich countries, but 90% of fatalities are happening in the low and middle income countries. However, if you look at the number of publications, majority of papers is coming from the high income countries. It doesn't really mean that it should be some kind of lower threshold for researchers from a low income country to publish. It doesn't mean that we bend the criteria, but rather we are willing to invest our time and helping these researchers to make their submission really a publishing paper. So usually this paper will take several rounds of reviews, of revisions, and editor reviewers, they do invest their time to help make those papers really valuable. Good. So how does all that convert into real practical criteria? So when we get a manuscript, how the decision process is going? So the mission statement, well, it all looks very nice, but it also a little bit, well, fluffy. Our main criteria is that it should be very clear with the answer on so what question. Does this manuscript, the submission, contribute to saving lives in traffic? Will anyone want to read this paper and feel that, okay, now I'm better equipped to do my job? And well, surprisingly, this is a very, very, very effective filter. Quite often, you can read a paper and it's very complex, lots of statistics, lots of clever words there, but at the end you feel, but like, what are you trying to solve? How are we going to use it? And if it's not obvious how it can be used, what kind of problem it is addressing, well, maybe then this is not a paper for our journal, for traffic safety research journal. We have been working on being even more specific. So we developed these quality criteria to support editors in that first triaging of the papers. So basically here we provide a scale. What is the worst case, what is the excellent case, and what falls in between. There is like a clear progression. So in case of a research question, well, if you read the paper and it's not clear what is the research question, well, that's quite poor. Sometimes research question is not articulated, but if you read it, you can figure out. And ideally, we want to see the research question formulated in the abstract, in the introduction, revisited in discussion and in conclusions. So the list is quite long. It's not really meant to be used as some kind of checkbox. Because even though those criteria are quite specific, sometimes it is difficult to put across where exactly it is. And sometimes you really feel, I'm not sure, maybe it's not relevant, maybe this particular paper does not fit those specific rubrics. But the general idea is the papers we are looking for, they should be more on this excellent side and they shouldn't have too much on the poor side. But at the end, of course, it is still very much the gut feeling of the editor. And I would want to speak more specifically about the research question, because research question for us, I would say it's maybe 50% of the decision is based on the research question. So if you search a little bit, there has been done quite much of like thinking about science theory or practical recommendations on how to conduct research, how to write papers. This is just one of the examples, a publication discussing how to formulate a research question. But I found quite useful two frameworks. One of them is called PICOT and the other one is FINER, and I will go through both of them. PICOT is about you have to specify population, intervention, comparator, outcome, and time frame. And you can recognize clearly that this is coming from the clinical research. So you have your treatment group, you have your control group, you provide the treatment, and then you monitor some kind of outcome, and then also you report your results, what happened after 1 week, or maybe after 1 month, or maybe 10 years later. So it's not always that traffic safety research feed into these like classical experimental case control experimentation. But I would rather interpret PICOT as being specific about your research question. So in our criteria, we formulated is research question should be clearly formulated, it should be easy to find it, it has to be related to traffic safety, and it should be very, very exact. Like the reader, the reviewer, the editor should not wonder like what exactly have you been doing. And just provide you some examples of research questions. How infrastructure impacts safety? Why pedestrians cross badly? How weather affects traffic safety? You probably could figure out that these are bad examples of research questions. Too broad, too unspecific. Very often it is impossible to answer these type of questions. What we ideally want to see in our submissions are the very, very specific questions. For example, what is the speed reducing effect of building chicanes on 100 km/h roads, mid-separated, 2+1, in front of secondary crossings in southern Sweden? This is very clear which context, what kind of measure, on what type of road, what kind of traffic, what type of environment. The other framework called FINER, it's a bit more philosophical, a bit more general, and I think this one is easier to apply even for our type of studies. So FINER stands for feasible, and that means that research question should be answerable. It shouldn't be too broad. It should be specific enough and also limited enough so that you can actually perform a study and answer the question with limitations of time available, data available, funding available. Like it should be small enough to be answerable. Interesting. Yes, science is about curiosity. We do research because we are curious. And it's really, really boring to read papers that deal with questions that no one is interested about. Novel. There should be some aspect of novelty. Either it's a totally new question or rather a new perspective on existing topic. Of course, novelty is important. However, we should not overemphasize the novelty. Again, in science theory courses, usually they give those examples like get out and start counting red cars passing the road. How many red cars has passed the road in the next hour? This is very novel. No one has ever done that before, but the problem is, so what? So it should be new, it should be adding to the existing knowledge, but novelty as such is not enough to make research interesting and relevant. Ethical. Again, I could clearly see the trend in maybe last 10-15 years where the ethics in research being emphasized, and now it has really become an obligatory part of researchers' education. Our PhD students, for example, they must take a course on research and ethics. And yeah, you probably all know those examples when it has really went wrong. For example, our university, Lund University, we ended up in textbooks on research ethics. In 60s, last century, there was research done by medical faculty dentists. So they wanted first figure out how to, like whether adding vitamins into diet can affect the occurrence of caries on teeth. And well, who would want to be subjects? Well, they decided that let's use mental hospital patients. Those guys would not complain, which is already very questionable practice. And they started to give them vitamins and different, change in the diet, and found that, well, it doesn't help against caries. Then they changed the question. They said, well, let's instead investigate what provokes caries. So they started to give candies and sugar and those different things that now we know are not good for teeth. And they found that it's not good. So they got statistically significant results. They published, very good. But like, what about those people? This is a very typical example when they haven't considered consequences, they haven't considered the ethical implications of what they were doing. And once it was done, well, it was too late to turn it back. You may think that in traffic safety, we do not deal with such outrageous cases. Well, and you are wrong. If you just Google a little bit, you find examples when traffic safety research went in the wrong direction as well. For example, in quite recent times, like 25, 30 years ago, there was experimental study done in Israel when they started to increase the speed limits to measure the effect, how accidents would increase if the speed limits are changed to higher values. And by then, everybody knew that increasing speed is not good. So they counted on more people being involved in accident, more people being killed, but for the sake of science, that was considered a proper ethical. Well, I mean, ethics wasn't really on the discussion there. Another example from Germany, there was a study also in the mid 90s when they wanted to perform crash tests with cadavers, so like the dead bodies of real people, but also they include bodies of dead children. And you can imagine how it felt for, I don't know, parents, generally for people around. So it's already a tragedy that a child had died, but then you're exposed for another violence. At that time, again, the discussion about ethics of such research was not really questioned, but when it became public, there was really an outrage. People were very, very much dissatisfied with such research being allowed. So, of course, you should think when you plan your study, you should think about how ethical is what you are doing. Yeah, and finally, the final letter R in FINER is the relevance. And the relevance, it means that someone really wants an answer to your research question. It has to be an urgent to address traffic safety problem. The answer to research questions should provide valuable insights, and those insights should be convertible into something tangible, intangible improvements, better policies, better measures, injuries prevented. And I really liked the classification of research questions that Henk Stibdong introduced during his webinar. He said, well, you should always aim at must know type of research question. Like the policymaker really, really needs to have your answer to take a decision. Very often we as researchers, we go after nice to know. We are curious, it would be interesting to investigate that, but unless someone really, really, really wants this answer, the result of such research with nice to know would be, well, there would be another PDF file produced somewhere on the internet, but it will not be taken, it will not be implemented. While must know research questions, it's really someone is waiting for you to provide the answer to use it in real life. Good. Let's talk a little bit about ethics, integrity, transparency. Now, I'm not talking about ethics in research questions, but rather in how we conduct research and also how we publish. Inappropriate research conduct. What are the most typical examples? And of course, we as editors, we are looking for that. It's not always easy to spot it, but that's something that we always have in the back of our mind when we read the papers. So most obvious, fabrication, falsification, p-hacking, like basically it means you fiddle with your data. Fabrication, it means you just invent your data. P-hacking means that, well, you made your test and it's not significant, but if I move that outlier just a little bit or pretend that it doesn't exist or invent a new exclusion criteria which wasn't really in my research plan, then I get sufficient level of confidence, and then it's becoming a publishable paper. Well, that's wrong. And I genuinely hope that you do not do that. Another problem is when you start changing the research question hypothesis once you have the data. So this abbreviation harking basically means hypothesizing after result is known. And again, if you look into books on statistics, on science theory, a proper way to do research, experimental research, is you formulate your research question, you collect your data, you perform the test, and then you report the test. That's it. You should not change the sequence. Or if you performed your test and it comes out not significant, well, you shouldn't perform new test and again and again and again. I do not really mean to go deeper to statistics. I'm not really consider myself to be like a proper expert to discuss it, but a very simple explanation to that is when we say that confidence level is 95%, basically it means there is 5% chance that the results that you get are just because of randomness. So you get a significant difference, but there is 5% chance that this difference is due to pure randomness. So if you take your data set, and 5%, it means 1 in 20. Yeah. So if you take your data set and you perform 20 different tests, well, at least one of them should come out significant. Of course, this is a little bit oversimplified, but it explains why it's not really correct to mangle your data, to test and retest again and again and change the research question until you find something that is significant and publishable. Because, well, those results are not generalizable. You might be able to publish it because it looks nicer, but it doesn't really add much to our knowledge, to the scientific knowledge. Yeah, and I put here a couple of books where these issues are discussed. I really, really enjoyed reading them, and I can recommend to you as well. Yeah, plagiarism. The most obvious way is that you take someone else's paper, just remove the authors, put your name there, and submit it as your own work. This doesn't happen very often now. We do perform by default. Each submitted paper is being tested by Authenticate, and actually so far we really never found any serious case where people have reused someone else's text. And probably it has to do with the AI tools that are getting more and more popularity, becoming more and more common. It's so easy to, even if you take someone's research, you can ask, well, please rewrite. And plagiarism detection tools are not able to detect that properly. Another issue is, well, self-plagiarism and also what is called salami publishing. When you made a study and you can make a nice, substantial one paper, but if your motivation is to publish as much as possible, you start slicing it. Each hypothesis becomes a separate paper. And this is, yeah, you can publish it, but like, why? It's not really valuable. It just spreads the effort. Each paper looks very shallow. And as readers, as editors, as reviewers, we really feel that. You feel when the paper is shallow, and particularly when you start referring. And then the second part of this study is reported in another paper. The natural question is, but like, why don't you put it in one paper? There is no really good reason for that. And well, AI writing. something that is quite new, but also something that we see more and more coming. And it's not really very clear how to deal with it. And there are reports that papers are being written by AI, that reviews are being done by AI, that editorial decisions are being done by AI. So at the end, you would answer, so why do we need human here in the loop at all? Let it be a self-sustainable system when AI does everything. But the question is whether it's really a sustainable way to increase our knowledge. Just to illustrate, I have been following a discussion at COPE. COPE is a Committee on Publishing Ethics. That's one of the associations I was mentioning. They're really, really serious when it comes to the best practices in scientific publishing. So they do have an active discussion now going how editors should deal with AI in all steps basically of publications. And basically the conclusion was, well, you cannot detect AI, not anymore. So all those tools that promise that they can tell you whether text is written by AI or not, they're not really reliable. The developer of ChatGPT, they basically closed down their detector project because their own detector couldn't detect text produced by their own AI. So and the trend is that in the future AI will be more and more human-like. So this is definitely a dead end. There will not be tools that can tell editors that this paper is written by AI. And also there are some legitimate uses for AI. For example, if an author who is not very fluent in English can improve their writing, well, why not? It's good. So what we as editors can do? Well, again, it comes down very much to the gut feeling. Since we cannot reject a paper by referring, we run a test and it says your paper is 95% AI, we have to produce arguments that are about the paper itself. There are some hints that may help us to identify, for example, if the author has never published anything on traffic safety, suddenly there comes an excellent paper, you can become a little bit suspicious. But of course, on the other hand, I mean, every PhD student wrote the first traffic safety paper in their career. So there will be people who will never publish in traffic safety. Now it's time. But if you see that it's a senior researcher and he has been publishing on whatever, forestry or mining or any other domain, and suddenly there comes a paper on traffic safety, well, it might be suspicious. Corrupt references, either hallucinated references, or when the reference doesn't really address the point in the article where it is used, that's also kind of red flag for the editors. But usually what we mostly go after is the type of phrasing, the type of logic, and particularly that superficiality of the text. Very often, like statistics, very nice. Pictures are very nice. Like all things to be discussed are being discussed, but the feeling is, but like you never come to the point. What do you really want to say? You're discussing, you are mentioning all those buzzwords, but you never come to the point. And in this case, it doesn't really matter whether it is the author who cannot articulate or cannot discuss or doesn't really understand the subject good enough to formulate, or it is produced by AI. That would be a sufficient reason for us to reject a paper. We want papers that are clear, that really have a message, and papers that can make a point. Yeah, and my request to you as authors is, well, help us editors by being transparent. So transparency is very important. And again, you will find more and more recommendations on best practice in publishing. Scientific transparency is very, very high on the agenda. Yeah, usually the kind of the short version of scientific transparency is be as transparent as scientifically valuable, at the same time be as private as ethically mandatory. So if adding more details really helps the readers, really helps the peer researchers to understand, to replicate your results, well, add those details. At the same time, we still have to behave ethically. We cannot expose personal data. We cannot expose sensitive data, but there are also ways to deal with it. So you can either anonymize data, or you can provide access, but have some kind of thresholds. So like people have to approach you and motivate it, and maybe some ethical committee should be involved before such data is shared. Yeah, so what is included in scientific transparency more specifically? The first step is identification. It has to be very clear who are the authors, what are the research organizations, which grants and funders were involved, what ethical board decisions were made. So like we don't have to ask you, but you have to provide that by default. It has to be very clear, it has to be obvious. Declarations, contribution of authors. So I hope you know what credit stands for. Competing interest, involvement of funders in research, planning, analysis, reporting of results, prior dissemination, whether this paper or some results of this paper were presented, published as a conference, maybe abstract, poster, as a report, as a thesis. It's not really a hinder for publication in a journal. So if you produced a project report and now you want to make a more concise, maybe report was in your local language, but now you write a paper in English for the global audience, that's perfectly okay. But you have to be open about that. And the same comes to the AI usage. AI is here to stay. It will be used more and more in research, in writing, in analysis. We cannot forbid it, but use it responsibly. Reveal what kind of help you got from the AI. If it was just for language, good. If it was some kind of discussion partner, that's also okay. But you have to make it transparent. Then the method and analysis. So again, here you should provide enough information. So in theory, someone else should be able to replicate your research. So it's not really sufficient that you say, well, we used the software which is described in a totally different paper. And then you go to that paper and it refers to an even earlier paper. You have to be clear enough what kind of analysis, what kind of method you have been using, why you choose a particular type of design, what kind of hardware, software you used, what were your subjects. It has to be open, it has to be transparent. The same with analysis. What kind of test did you use? What kind of assumptions did you use? What was the confidence level? Reporting of results. Again, you should not report only significant results, but also results that didn't come up significant, because that's also important. No results are important. Sensitivity analysis. Very often we have to, well, choose some kind of thresholds, but do we always have very good reasons for why threshold is put there and not there? And that can be addressed by making sensitivity analysis. So try the same test, but with different thresholds, see whether the results are pointing in the same direction. Yeah, and finally, what is also becoming more and more common, and what we will demand from you more and more, is to share your data and your analysis code. So it should be done by default. Up to now, it was very common that author writes, well, you can get the data on request. This is a practice that we will discourage quite a lot. If you think the data can be shared, well, share it in advance. Reviewers might want to have a look while reviewing your paper. Editor might want to look. The readers later, once the paper is published, again, they want to get access to your data, and contacting you, waiting for response, it all creates those unnecessary thresholds. It is important that you also describe your data. So like metadata is data about the data. So what those tables, those numbers, those columns, what do they represent? It should be clear how to use your data set. It's better to use open formats, not some commercial formats. But again, it depends, of course, on what type of data you use. And using persistent identifiers, DOI links, this is also becoming more and more important, because yeah, if you put it just on your personal website or professional website, and then you change your job, and then link doesn't work anymore, sorry, all that is addressed by using DOI addresses. And if you haven't published your data yet, you don't know where to start, I could really recommend you this repository, Zenodo. Very, very simple to use. It is financed by the European Union. I think the servers are based in Schweiz, but it is European Union repository. It's open for everybody from anywhere. So really, like a researcher from China, from India, from Australia can upload their data there. And also it is really user-friendly. Like it's very easy to get going. You upload your data, you get your DOI link, and you can put it in your article. You can wait with making the data publicly accessible until, for example, the paper is published, but the link itself is available from the very beginning. There are many other repositories. There are national repositories. Some big institutions have their own repositories. That's perfectly okay. But my point is, you cannot use it as an excuse, well, I don't know where to upload that. There are repositories, and Zenodo is one of those where it's open for everybody. Yeah, and well, some concluding remarks. I talked a lot about what we don't want to see and how to avoid that, how to help us as editors. How to get your paper flying? Well, please understand us as editors, as reviewers, it is difficult. it is difficult to take decisions. It is difficult to read someone else's research. For you, it might be very obvious. You spend a year maybe working with this paper. You know your data inside out. You know all the methods, but not everyone are very good communicators. And there might be great ideas, great findings, but it's not always well communicated. So for us as editors, it is always, not always, but often a challenge to understand what really the author is trying to say here. So I want to highlight here what you really, really should be clear on, what we really want to see in your paper. What is the objective? What is the research question? I mentioned that the decision, the initial decision of the editor is 50% is based on the research question. If I don't understand research question, most probably I will reject the paper. Make it very clear, very specific, put it in abstract, put it in introduction, put it in discussion and conclusions. What was the motivation? Why this research question is relevant? Like, we are not experts on all aspects of traffic safety. So if I get a paper where I'm kind of not really at home, I really want to know why what you are doing is of relevance, is of importance. Next one, what is your contribution? Yes, you have a great question and you have explained why this question is important, but what have you added? What is the difference from the general knowledge that was available, and what is your extra, extra brick in the wall that you put by having done this research and by having this paper in publication? And finally, what we really want to see is so what? Answer to so what question. Put your research into a bigger context. Who is supposed to use your results? How those results can contribute to better traffic safety? Why what you have been doing is important. We would really, really want to see that written in plain, simple language, clear for us, for reviewers, for readers. That really adds value to the paper. Yeah, and finally, this is my last slide. It's a little bit of a philosophical slide, I would say. Good paper takes time to mature. I do know that many of us are under pressure and we have to produce papers, and sometimes it's number of papers per year and so on. But if you are serious about having a good paper, let it mature. It does take time. Sometimes it takes a year, 2 years to write it properly, to become clear for yourself. So what is the contribution? What are the points? All those important points. And here I don't really mean that it's an excuse for us to extend the reviewing process. It does take time, unfortunately. I'm not talking about that type of maturity, but see also the reviewing process as part of maturity. The comments you get from the editor, the comments you get from reviewers, they are meant to improve your paper. The way we organize the work is that if we send a paper to reviewers, it means we see potential, we see the value of that paper, and the question to reviewers is not really help us decide whether it should be rejected or not. That is a decision with the editor. We ask reviewers, can you please suggest how this paper can be improved? So please see the comments from the reviewers from that perspective. Those are your peers doing similar things. Very often they're expert in a similar domain. and they are sharing their advice what can be make better. So it's not about criticizing you personally or criticizing your research. It's about how to help you make your work better. Yeah, and you can find again some inspiration about doing work slowly in some of those books. I don't know if you heard about slow food motion. Now we have also slow professorship movement. And it's basically about the same. Good science take time. You need to think long periods of time, and then what comes out have much, much better quality. Good. This is me. I realized I didn't really introduce me in the beginning, but I am an associate professor at Lund University. I am editor-in-chief of traffic safety research. You can reach me by either journals, emails, or also Google my name. You find my professional email. And I think I will stop here. We have not so many questions, not so many minutes left, but I think we can have a couple of questions at least. And also I want to mention we do have quite a few editors in the audience, so I may address some of the questions to them. Like Carmela, for example, is here as well. Yes, Rula, please.
Hello. So I apologize ahead of time. I came a bit late, but so in your view, what do journals look for in a paper that has enough real-world safety value, especially in papers that are really mature and they are heavily focused on methodological contributions?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way you put questions, journals in general, I wouldn't really want to answer for all the journals. I think, like, to be honest, I'm quite disappointed with quite of those journals that used to be golden standards in our field. But for us, for traffic safety research, we are looking for that. Can it be used? Is it usable? Is there someone who wants to read this paper and start using? It can be people like practitioners, someone at road administration, city, municipality, like they need more hands-on knowledge. Like put speed humps 3 meters from zebra crossing or 10 meters away from speed crossing, this type of knowledge. I don't want to say that methodological research is not needed. We do need better tools. Of course, that is necessary. But sometimes I do get a feeling that papers heavily focusing on methodology. Like it's becoming really playground for like making things more and more complex, and we are forgetting what is the real goal. Sometimes you can answer questions using relatively simple methods, and we don't need to overcomplicate it.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes for publication, we used a new method on a new data set. That's novel, let's publish it. But it's not always adding value.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Alexei, I might have a curious question.
Yeah.
How many submissions do you get per year? Just to get a feeling of how many submissions you are dealing with.
I mean, it is really growing exponentially. So I would say like I get 2-3 per week, something like that. Yeah. And rejection rate for the last half a year, it's like almost 90%. We do have some statistics for the last year. It's not very dramatic. It's something like 70%. But what I could really see in the last half a year, number of papers is really skyrocketing, and also many of them do not pass the editorial triage.
Okay. That's interesting. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then. Thank you very much for being here. There will be a recording available. And I'm looking forward to your submissions. We promise to be very personal and handling you well. Even if papers get sometimes rejected, it's not a personal issue. It's about contributing to better science. And also, we are very, very much open for your feedback. I mentioned that earlier. And again, we have had good cases when people reached out to us and said, well, maybe you should change a policy, and we did. So we are open for learning, we are open for feedback. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks
Okay.
you. Bye-bye.
Let's conclude. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.